Benjamin Butterworth and Mail Online reporter Lettice Bromowski. So welcome back to both of you. We've dealt with a lot of the front pages in the previous hours, but you've been delving inside the papers and there's lots more analysis on the two main stories of the day. Those are yesterday's local elections and Prince Harry's extraordinary interview that he did with the BBC, which have been dominating those fronts. But let's kick off with the election coverage inside, Lettice. And inside the Daily Mail is a double-page spread here saying the fight starts today to win back trust. And it's Labour and the Tories who are really licking their wounds this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. And focusing on the Tories just for a moment, because really they have been handed a heavy blow from the local elections. They lost a huge number of seats. I don't have the exact figure in front of me, but they have lost a huge number of seats. And that's because it's been the sort of two-pronged loss, because they've lost seats to the Lib Dems and they've lost seats to Reform as well. And so really now the question is how they are going to build back trust, because perhaps surprisingly, Kemi really isn't cutting through in the way that they wanted her to. She's only been there for 6 months, but there's been so much other political noise, you could say, from Reform and what's going on there, that she just doesn't seem to be making the cut through that they need to do. There has been already some voices saying, you know, are their Tories going to replace their leader? Obviously, I don't think that would be the right direction they should take, as this says here, to win back trust. They need to start winning back trust. And you would think that after the 5 years and 6 prime ministers they had, the Tories will have learnt their lesson that just opposing of a leader as soon as things start to go wrong is not the way to handle any situation. And there's been other conversations as well about whether the Conservatives need to start working more closely with Reform and whether they should be looking towards the future in terms of a coalition of sorts. However, right now, I'm not sure that Nigel Farage would be interested in a coalition.
He feels he doesn't need it, yeah.
Yeah, and I think he's right to think he doesn't need it. And actually, if you were to look at a place like Runcorn, if there was some kind of Tory Reform pact, well, I suspect they wouldn't have voted for a Reform candidate because they're sort of, inverted commas, old Labour types that are tempted by Reform, you know, wanting to nationalise steel. I mean, the thing about Kemi Badenoch is that everyone knows how this ends. It ends in her being deposed. The question is when, not if.
Do you think that's inevitable?
Yeah, absolutely. I was speaking to a Tory MP who was on the front bench as the results were coming in overnight the other night, and he said to me she's been dropped in the deep end before she's ready for it, and we'll give her a year because it just seems too soon to get rid of her. She's, you know, people think she's not had enough of a chance, but it looks like the writing's on the wall. And I mean, it's blatantly obvious, you know, she doesn't seem to have a message to relay, and she can't control her party. You know, Sarah Vine in the Mail, the columnist, talks about how she has to deal with Robert Jenrick, the man that she beat to the Tory leadership, but who is blatantly profiling himself to be Tory leader every single day. There's no discipline, there's no vision.
Do you think that's right, that Kemi Badenoch's days are inevitably numbered, as Benjamin would suggest? Or would it be that any Tory leader would find it a very difficult task after 14 years in power that people at the last election said they'd had enough of?
Yeah, no, I don't think her days are numbered, and I hope they're not numbered for the sake of the reputation of the Conservative Party. They cannot keep on just getting rid of people as soon as things go wrong. We always knew this was going to be a terrible election result for the Conservatives. This result for them isn't that surprising. What they need to find now is they've got to find their own sort of path forward, so to speak.
Well, yeah, and she has held back on introducing policy, hasn't she? She said that she needs to take time to get the right policy. And was that a mistake? Should they be offering more to
I don't think in local elections a lot of the policies that Nigel Farage has been going forward have been the populist policies. They've been a lot very heavy on immigration, which is really a national issue. It's not necessarily going to be handled with local elections on such a specific level. I think with her policies going forward, there's 4 years to a general election. They do have the time. Her issue now is the fact that she's got former Conservative MPs who are defecting to Reform. She's got donors like Nick Candy who are leaving the Conservative Party and again going over to Reform. It's the sort of mental image and the day-by-day news that keeps on hacking away at the Conservative Party.
She's the leader of managed decline. I mean, that's the reality of it. Local elections aren't a good indication of what would happen in a general, but it does at least indicate the direction of travel. And I think Sky News' own prediction said that if you put yesterday's or this week's results onto a national scale, you'd have 12 Conservative MPs, right? That's a tenth of their worst ever result of what they've got at the moment. Now, it's very unlikely it would really be that bad, but that should terrify them. And the real question is, she's clearly not going to cut through, right? It's just obvious. None of them think she is. Look at their faces during PMQs. They look so awkward. And so do they want to wait another year, or do they want to find someone else? Because in normal times, not putting policies forward at the start of a parliament would be a reasonable way to re-understand your party's purpose. But reform is taking the whole game away from them. The money, the support, even their MPs are going to be defecting soon.
They're taking the whole game away from them, yes, but it's also been a bit of a sort of fanfare out there. They've been having very public spats, you know, the one between Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe. They've only got, well, now they've got 5 MPs with Rupert Lowe when it was, then it went to 4 after Rupert Lowe went. Now it is obviously 5 again, but, you know, they're not very big in terms of that. We haven't actually seen them do anything in terms of real governance, real powers.
Well, now they have
mayoralties
and they have councils that they're controlling, so it'd be interesting to see what
And I will add one
they do with
thing,
it.
which is that there is serious talk of Rupert Lowe defecting to the Conservatives. I know that conversations have been happening behind closed doors. Maybe if that happened, that could save Kemi Badenoch's right-wing credentials. I don't know whether they'd want him. He's quite a provocative MP. He's quite unpredictable, independent-minded. But that's certainly happening behind closed doors.
So lots of conversations being had in Labour as well, it has to be said, which we will discuss another time. But in the meantime, let's move on to the other kind of story that has dominated the front pages, as we've shown everybody in the last couple of hours. But inside the papers, this is a story, Benjamin, you picked out inside the Mirror, which really picks out one of the main headlines from the interview, though there were so many, really, weren't there, saying it's in Dad's hands. And this is talking about him wanting a reconciliation, but also saying the thing that was blocking it was this issue of his own security. Yeah,
so he lost this court bid to get the level of security that he would as a working royal, that his sibling, Prince William, gets. And he has given this extraordinary interview, it's quite an emotional interview, in which he talks about how his dad could stop this, he could change this, the king could step in and basically withdraw the barriers. But he also talks about how the fact they don't talk, and he says this security argument of Prince Harry wanting the security is why his dad won't talk to him, but he doesn't know how long he has left, which is obviously a desperately sad situation. It also strikes me that given that his oversharing, his breaking down the privacy that they have as a family between his Netflix programmes and between the memoir that he did, well, is it really going to be appreciated that the king, who has cancer and has been relatively open, but we don't know where the medical progress is at, that's not been shared, and they said it wouldn't be shared. And when he says, I don't know how long he has left, you know, some people are going to infer that that means that it's not as positive as we've been told. Now, we don't know either way, but I doubt if you're the king, you're thrilled at people being able to read that into it.
No, we don't know either way. And it's possible that Prince Harry doesn't know either way if he's not actually speaking to his father at the moment as well, I guess. What did you make of this interview? Because there were lots of different elements to it. Weren't there?
There were lots of different elements. And the first time I watched it, I sympathised with him, because you can see he almost feels like he's tearing up a little bit because he is so sad when he's talking about wanting to reconcile with his father and how he's worried about the relationship between Charles and his own children, how they might not have one. But I also think, like you were saying, you know, if you really want to reconcile with someone, you don't go to a national news organisation and do an interview probably without even telling the person you're going to reconcile with. So I think he's handled this all wrong, and I don't think that Charles is going to take kindly to him kind of airing this public dirty laundry to the British press. And so, yeah, I do think he's handled this wrong. And you can just see he's very personally upset about the outcome of that court hearing.
Yeah, he said he was ready to forgive, didn't he, himself?
But he seemed very much like he was saying throughout, I'm ready to forgive, but that's making him seem like he's been the victim in all of this. Whereas he has a role to play in this. He says, I'm ready to forgive over the book that I wrote that was incredibly damning on his own family and called his stepmother a wicked stepmother and things like this. But he didn't take any of the blame in that interview either.
He says, yeah, I'm ready to reconcile, but it's my dad's fault that this isn't fixed. And I'm ready to reconcile despite what some members of the family have been like to me. I mean, it feels like he's saying one thing, but there's a different message behind it. And if you were the family, if you were any family who'd been treated like that, the trust, once it's broken, is very hard to rebuild. And I just suspect doing an interview that garners every front page is not the answer to building that trust and that sense of privacy that they want back.
Yeah, on a human level, it's a sad story, isn't it?
Yeah.
Families.
It is, and people are entitled to
families.
not talk to their parents. You know, families fall out, and that's legitimate. But, you know, we all have to watch it along because their princes and kings.
Yeah, that is so true. It can be very public. A very quick look at the front page of The Telegraph, one of their news in briefs there, US to stop mediating in Ukraine peace talks.
Yes, obviously this comes after a whole week that we've seen, but Trump is finally saying that he is going to essentially step back from the peace talks because, you know, it's not working. And I think this is sort of a very Trump angle to be taking at this point. He's tried doing the way where he's forced Ukraine to the table. He's tried the way where he's gone over their head and tried to be friends with Russia, and nothing's working. And he really ran his ticket to coming into the presidency saying that, you know, he was going to end the wars, and he's been sort of unable to do that at this point.
Yeah, and we'll see whether this is a negotiating tactic as well.
Well, exactly.
Of course, too. So nice to have your company this morning. Thanks both very much indeed.
Thank you.
We arrive